Tonight brings us to Mark chapter 5. As we study the gospel of what Jesus did, we recall Mark telling us from the beginning it was the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, and at the end of the book, the conclusion by the centurion that truly this man was the Son of God. We'll certainly see Jesus acting and speaking like God tonight, as we have three stories in the 5th chapter of Mark, and one of them interrupts the other one, so we'll end up having 4 sections. We'll just go ahead and put the 4 sections up, put them all up there. Mark 5, 1 to 20, Jesus heals the man with the demon. This is the one that has the demon who gives the name of Legion, and we have the pigs rushing over the cliff. So we have that bit of excitement. Then we have Jesus returning from that side of the Sea of Galilee back toward Capernaum, and Jairus, however you want to say, a synagogue official pleads for his daughter. As they are going to his house to see about her, there is such a crushing crowd that they can't make it down the street. We can imagine the man's consternation as the only one who can possibly help is coming, but he is delayed by the folks in the road. And you thought traffic was bad tonight. And along the way, a woman reaches out and grabs Jesus and is healed by him. And then a conversation over that ensues. And then while standing there, glorifying God for that, comes the sad news that the young girl has died. And so then in sadness, Jairus continues on to his house with Jesus and the apostles. And Jesus will then heal his daughter for our third and final miracle. So our 3 miracles: the healing of the severely afflicted man with the great demons, the woman with the issue of blood who is healed on the way to Jairus' house, and then his daughter healed. These stories are in the other Gospels. They're familiar stories to us. Matthew 8, toward the end of that chapter, and also in Luke 8, is the story of the one with the demon and the raising of the girl and the woman who's healed along the way. That's in Matthew 9 and also in Luke 5. And so familiar territory to us. And Luke has a lot of verses here. What you mean, Matthew? I'll get it right in a minute. It's Mark. It says so right on the screen, right in front of my face, right above me, right up there. It says Mark. Mark will tell us about Jesus's coming and goings. So verse 1, they came to the other side of the sea, into the company of the Gerasenes. When he got out of the boat, immediately, there's a lot of immediatelys in this, immediately a man from the tombs with an unclean spirit met him, and he had his dwelling among the tombs. And no one was able to bind him anymore, even with a chain. So this guy has been going wild for a while, and he's right down there near the shore, along the road, in the cemetery. And just imagine anybody having to do any business from town to the boats, or anybody traveling thereabouts, and they're accosted by this fella. You know, I get annoyed enough with the aggressive panhandlers that we sometimes see around here, and compared to other parts of the country, they're nothing. But I don't like seeing these fellas. But imagine one of these wild characters, but he's actually fully demon possessed. We sometimes think some of these wild street characters are demon possessed, but this one truly was. And so they tried to bind him with shackles and chains. They'd often done that, it says in verse 4. They had often bound him with shackles and chains. Don't you wish we could do some of that? But the chains were torn apart by him, and the shackles broken to pieces, and no one was strong enough to subdue him. And so we think about some of these characters we see on the news sometimes, that the police are trying in as humane a way as possible to, and sometimes not as humane as possible, but police are trying to subdue some of these characters, and they're just out of control. And especially if they're on drugs, just what does it take to subdue them? Well, this guy is not just on drugs, he's demon possessed, and their tools, I'm sure, were more limited than ones in modern times. And so consequently, verse 5, night and day he was screaming among the tombs and in the mountains, and gnashing himself with stones. And so this is just Well, today we'd say psychotic behavior or crazy behavior, but it's demon-possessed behavior. It's one of the reasons why we see people, especially drugged out folks, today we compare it to demon possession, and we use this kind of language. But he's uncontrollable. He's screaming night and day. He's all over the place. He's down in the tombs. He's down by the road and the beach, and sometimes he's up in the mountains, and he's cutting himself. And just what a horror. Jesus then, seeing Jesus from a distance, verse 6, he ran up and bowed down before him. So this is the first rational and reasonable thing this guy's probably done in a long time, but he heads straight to Jesus. And we recall how many times here in the opening chapters of Mark, the demons understand who Jesus is and they come and confess him. And he always tells them to hush up about it. But this guy runs up and he bows to Jesus, and with a loud voice he says, "What business have we to do with each other, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I implore you, do not torment me." And so he rushes over. So we might think it's better to hide out, right? Go get on that mountain and go to the backside, or go get behind some of those tombs where people can't see you. But I guess he knows Jesus will know he's there. And he says, "What do I have to do with you? Please," he says, "do not torment me." What does the demon know is going to be the end of the things with demons? It's the torment, right? It is the torment. The James 2, the demons believe and tremble. Now, again, they believe in the sense that they know who God is. They recognize who God is. They don't honor him as God. They don't obey him as God. They don't glorify him as God, but they recognize him as God. And they tremble because of what he's going to do. And what is he going to do? Well, we as humans have before us the scary imagery of hell. And the possibility of hell is a terrible thing to us. And some people just can't hardly even stand to bring it up. They can't hardly even seem to want to think about it. It's usually that kind of person needs to think about it the most. But that the possibility of hell is there is a sobering thought. But for these guys, it's not a possibility, it's a certainty. From Matthew 25:41, right? What about the unfaithful, the unfruitful? "Depart from me, accursed ones, to the eternal fire, prepared for the devil and his angels." Well, it's hell, the place prepared for the devil. It's made for them. It's made for the devil and his angels. Jude spoke of the angels who didn't keep their own domain, but now they're in eternal bonds under darkness for the judgment of the great day. So Jude speaks of angels that are already held captive, and they, in certainty, are going to be condemned. Well, this demon is pretty sure that's going to be his end as well. And that whether he was loose from those chains for a season, which is what I think most believers believe, that this time around the ministry of Jesus was a special outpouring of this kind of demonic activity, or maybe a gathering of all of Satan's forces from all over, all gathered just right there in and around where Jesus was for the battle that's coming, or what. But they know their end. They certainly know that, and this one knows his end. And so it says, verse 8, he had been saying to him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." So Jesus was saying, "Come out." Now it's interesting that these demons are able to put up a little resistance, because instead of just immediately coming out when Jesus said, they know they're coming out, but he's not coming out quite yet. He's got some resistance. He's got some arguing to do. But of course we know, for instance, what happens when folks get surrounded by the cops, or several cops are around them, and the cops are about to slap the cuffs on them, and then they decide to argue the point. Or they decide to, maybe push and shove by some of the cops that are surrounding them. How do we know that's going to go, right? And that seems to be what's going on. The resistance and the argumentation of the defeated. And so Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" And he said to him, "My name is Legion, for we are many." Now, I don't know if this demon is resistance and evasiveness, not giving his name. We know even among human affairs, how many times do people not want to give their names, right? And it's one of the big things on the internet that people do things anonymously that they would never do otherwise. Although we're shocked at what people do in their own name, right? Look at the social media things where there's a real name policy, and people just still do shocking things that they wouldn't do in front of other people. But if the other people were present. But what if it's anonymous? How do people act when it's anonymous? And then one of the big threats is to dox them, right? To let everybody know who they are, who said this and does this, and who holds these positions. And so we're not sure if this demon here is evading, because there's a certain power in the name. In the name of Christ, right, is great power, is great authority, should be held in great reverence. We know from the commandments, don't take the Lord's name in vain. There's a certain importance and power of names, especially when people misuse names, right? I've been recently studying with one of the Bible studies I do through the story of Jacob. And Jacob lies to his father, and he says the wrong name. He says he's Esau when he's not. And then when he wrestles with that angel asks him, "What is your name?" And so there's a certain power and importance of names. I don't suggest delving too deep into it, but you think about the things of curses and magic and the like, and the having somebody's name is important in that realm. So maybe this demon is trying to resist and not say who he is, or maybe there's just so many of them they don't have time to go through the roll call, and so they have a group name. But in any case, he says, "My name is Legion, for we are many." Now, a Roman legion can end up being thousands of people. Are there thousands of demons in this fella, or maybe is this demon trying to front a little bit and put on airs and give a title that's bigger than he is? It's just an interesting answer, and there's more questions that I have about that answer than I know the answers to that in that regard. But here we have the answer of Legion. He is Legion, but that still doesn't give him any sway with Jesus. And it says he began, verse 10, immediately to implore him earnestly not to send him out to the country. Now, again, that's a strange phrase, not to send him to the country, not to send him out, it appears, where there's nobody at. Maybe these demons couldn't exist very long or very well disembodied. Or maybe these demons all wanted to stay together, and there was no way to do that otherwise. But verse 11 says, "Now there was a large herd of swine feeding nearby on the mountain. And the demons implored him, saying, 'Send us into the swine that we may enter them.'" And so the swine is preferable to whatever else they thought Jesus might immediately do. And Jesus gave them permission. And coming out, the unclean spirits entered the swine. And then it appears that the whole herd got spooked, and the herd rushed down a steep bank into the sea, about 2,000 of them, and they were drowned in the sea. Well, maybe that legion wasn't an exaggerated name. There's 2,000 swine, and then this whole herd of swine, they just go basically commit suicide. They just drive themselves into the sea under whatever pain or whatever difficulty having these demons enter them does. And so what a strange story. And of course, also we see we're not in a Jewish area because there's 2,000 pigs. Imagine being at 2,000 pigs in a Jewish area. But it's just a strange story. And anybody who saw that, and especially in this case, it's the herdsmen who see that, verse 14, the herdsmen ran away. I would too. Your livelihood is gone. I mean, what are 2,000 pigs worth? especially 2,000, 2,000 valuable livestock animals in the ancient world. Their livelihood is gone. This crazy man who has been tormenting them and everybody else in town, he is gone and visited with Jesus, and they've had some kind of argument and confrontation on the road, and then the thing with the pigs, and the people came to see what had happened. Well, there's looky-loos and gawkers at all times, and when something big goes on, we want to go see it and find out. And so when they came, verse 15, they observed the man who had been demon-possessed. So he had been, but he's no longer. They observed him sitting down and clothed in his right mind, the very man who had had the legion, and they became frightened. So here's a fellow who knows for how long he's been troubling them, and now he is just sitting there, normal as can be, sitting down having conversation. I almost want to say just sitting there having tea and supper, but he's just there normal. All that was is gone. It's all been erased. It's all been cured by Jesus. Now, this is a verse that some sardonically like to point to when we talk about modesty, that this man, now that he has met Jesus, he's no longer naked, he's clothed and in his right mind. And the point is often made, well, if you are in your right mind, you'll be clothed right. I don't know if that's exactly a fair point, but I say sardonically it's often made, or at least I've heard it made, about modesty. But in any case, the clothing is the sign of normalcy. It's the sign of a return to a properly ordered mind, and the fact that he can sit there and he can converse with people. And so they come up and he's sitting down having a conversation with Jesus, and it frightens people, just like last time it was a frightening thing when they saw the waves be stilled. Who has the power of that? And so those who had seen it described to them what had happened, verse 16, to the demon-possessed man and about all the swine. And they began to implore him to leave the region. Please, sir. He's almost too much for them to bear. He's too much for them to contemplate. And Jesus doesn't stay usually where he's not wanted. And so he leaves. He gets back in the boat. He appears to have never made it to town. He just got halfway up the hill to town, out there by the cemetery, but never makes it all the way in. And so he was getting in the boat, and the man who had been demon-possessed was imploring him that he might accompany him. And so this guy volunteers basically, I think, to be the 13th apostle. Please, sir, you have helped me so much. I am with you. I want to go with you. And of course, we also think about the man, what's he got left? Whatever he would have had of home and family and reputation and business or whatever that he would have had over there, I'm sure that's gone. And so I'll just go with you, please, sir. And Jesus said, contrary to what he said over and over before, Jesus said he would not let him, but said, go home to your people and report to them what great things the Lord has done for you and how he had mercy on you. So great things and mercy. Go report the great things and the mercy and tell everybody. So Jesus has been telling people, don't spread it around, don't tell. Now, that's areas where Jesus was regularly. And it seems to me that Jesus wanted to tell his own story. Jesus would tell them what it was that he was and what it meant that he was what he was. But he's not going to be over there on that side of the sea again for very long, and it will be a little bit. But this man is told, no, you go over there and you tell everybody. And so he went away and began to proclaim in Decapolis what great things Jesus had done for him, and everyone was amazed. And so I kind of think about this is like Jonah after the time in the fish, right? After when Jonah goes to the city of Nineveh, and the story of who Jonah was and what had happened to him, I'm sure that prepared the way for the people to repent. Well, this guy has a story like that. He's a new Jonah character. He was captive. He was crazy. He was possessed, and he was a well-known person for that. And now he goes to the city of Decapolis and he tells everyone. A little bit later, in 2 chapters, in chapter 7, Jesus is going to go to Decapolis and he gets a great reception there. And they just line up in rows to be healed. And why would that reception be so grand and that welcome so strong? Well, this guy did what Jesus told him. And so the guy who Jesus tells us to tell, he does a better job, it appears, than the people that Jesus tells not to tell, because he does what Jesus says. So that's our powerful healing number 1 with that story. And then Jesus goes back now to the other side. And for the next several verses, we find out about a terrible situation that Jesus was asked to deal with. When Jesus had crossed over again in the boat to the other side, a large crowd gathered around him, and so it says he stayed by the seashore. One of the synagogue officials named Jairus, or Jairus, again, take your pick on pronunciation, Jairus came up and seeing him fell at his feet and implored him earnestly, saying, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Please come and lay your hands on her so that she may get well and live." Well, we've already found that the synagogues aren't the friendliest places to Jesus at this time. But this synagogue official in his need is certainly friendly to Jesus, and certainly one who comes and implores him with an earnest plea to come and help my daughter. So whether he has no choice in this but Jesus, he has no alternative, and that's what drives him, or he's a faithful official in a synagogue, we don't know, but we know the earnestness of his plea. And Jesus says, "I'll go with you." Now, as we had at times, people who are standoffish to Jesus, and we'll run across some of those for this story's over. We find a lot of people are happy to see Jesus, and they greatly want to see Jesus. And so as he went off, again, there was this great crowd. Jesus now goes through the great crowd, and they are following him, and they are pressing in on him. And so it's hard to get down the street. So imagine the foot traffic in the way. Well, amongst that crowd pressing in on Jesus, in verse 25 was a woman who had a hemorrhage for 12 years. So somebody with no alternative. She had endured much at the hands of the physicians and had spent all that she had and was not helped at all, but rather grown worse. Yeah, nothing new about that, is there? All right, so medicine as she could get had not helped her. She is desperate. She has spent everything on the physicians. She has endured much at their hands. It hasn't helped. And so she's about as a desperate situation as that man with the demons was. And we think about that, this constant hemorrhage, this constant flow of blood, and that's what it's called in verse 29, a flow of blood immediately dried up. So a constant flow of blood. You think about the physical consequences of constant bleeding for 12 years. Weakness, anemia, certainly we would think of the hygiene issues with that. And also think about under the law that with the blood, you'd be ceremonially unclean. She's constantly unclean. She's never not clean. And if this flow of blood is, as we generally suspect, something to do with the reproductive parts of the body, in the book of Leviticus, when there was a flow of blood, then there was to be no sexual relations. And because then both the woman and the man were considered unclean and to be cut off from the people. That's Leviticus 20 and 18. Well, this lady has been physically ill, ceremonially unclean for now over a decade. And so again, we have the powerful miracle that Jesus is going to do by just her touching him, coming in faith to do that, and the power of the miracle. And just like we saw with the miracle that healed this demon, right? Go and report the great things the Lord has done and had mercy. And so there, Jesus describes that miracle as a great thing. So it's a powerful thing, and it's merciful. Well, this miracle is the same thing. This miracle is going to be a great power, and it's going to be merciful. And here are the threefold things that come with miracles in both the demonic case, in this case, and also, well, with the healing of the daughter, the raising her from the dead that's about to come. We have the confirmation or the power, right? Like the blind man would say in John 9, no one can do this unless God is with you. So we have the power or the confirmation of the speaker, great power of God to show this is with God. We also have the mercy or the compassion. And then we also have the emblematic, right? That what is this teaching about Jesus's power and compassion? Well, it will set you free from the devil, right? You're healed from the demonic influence. This lady, you're healed from your uncleanness and your weakness. And the girl who's going to be healed at the end, she is the picture of the new life that Jesus can give. And so in miracles, there's the confirmation, there's the compassion, but also there's the emblematic importance or the lesson, the moral lesson that's taught from the physical act. So great power of God, great mercy, great compassion. And here it is, Jesus heals these three different kinds of things, but all of those have, these physical things have spiritual analogs that teach us as well. So here she is. She's come to Jesus through the crowd, and verse 27, hearing about Jesus. So evidently she hasn't seen any miracles yet. Don't know where she's from. She may have been from out of town, but she hasn't evidently seen Jesus heal people, but she's heard about it. And so she, on the basis of hearing, she comes and she touched his cloak, for she thought, if I just touch his garment, I'll get well. And so she thinks I can be healed just by touching him. Turns out she thought right. She thought right. Immediately, verse 20, again, as I said, there's several immediately's in this chapter. Immediately, the flow of blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her affliction. So again, whatever weakness this caused, whatever pain or difficulty this caused her, that is gone immediately. And so she knows what has happened. What she wanted has come true, and has come true immediately. Verse 30, immediately Jesus, perceiving in himself that the power proceeding from him had gone forth, he turned around in the crowd and said, who touched my garment? So somebody was touching him for a healing, and he calls attention to it. As Jesus knows all things, we're pretty sure he knew, but he draws attention to it. So the miracle is publicized, and the faith is revealed. Verse 31, his disciples said to him, you see the crowd pressing in on you, and you say, who touched me? It's like, man, everybody down the road is touching you. You're getting jostled by the crowds. But he looked around to see the woman who had done this. But the woman, fearing and trembling, aware of what had happened to her, came and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And so now everybody can know, not just her and not just Jesus. But now through this, everybody can know. And we think about this woman who must have been, through that more than a decade of this terrible affliction. She's been separated from people. She's been isolated. She's been troubled. This is not the way you plan for life to be. And then all of a sudden, it gets brought out with a spotlight, and the spotlight in front of Jesus and everybody in the street full of folks. They're all looking at you. And so we can imagine her trepidation in facing this whole thing, but we also appreciate her honesty. And so she tells everything. And then Jesus, receiving her, says, verse 34, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction. And so your faith has made you well. Her faith acted based on what she'd heard about Jesus. Her faith had concluded the right thing, and she had, by her faithful action, she had the blessing that she had sought, and she has the peace of Jesus and the healing of Jesus given to her as he sends her away with this lovely benediction. And so here we have this story that interrupts the story. We've got a dying girl, and on the way to the dying girl, we have a woman healed. Well, Jairus then, I'm sure, has been with every bit of self-control he can muster to be patient with this while we're needing to get to my house because of my daughter, right? While he was still speaking, they came from the house of the synagogue official, and they say, "Your daughter has died. Why trouble the teacher anymore?" And so it's too late. Sorry, sir, it's too late. Let's let him go. He can't do anything. There's no need to have him come because what we needed was the opportunity is past. But Jesus, overhearing what was spoken, verse 36, said to the synagogue official, "Do not be afraid any longer, only believe." So now it's your turn to believe. This lady was healed with her belief. It's your turn to believe. And he says, don't be afraid anymore. How afraid would you be if your daughter was dying? And so, no, we don't need that. I can still help, but you need to believe. And he allowed no one to accompany him except Peter and James and John, the brother of James. Now, this is the first of three notable occasions where the three are taken into more private knowledge, a more intimate setting, a more exclusive, as it were, a set. At the Transfiguration, it's these three who are taken up on the mountain with Jesus, and at the Garden of Gethsemane, it's these who are taken farther into the garden with Jesus. So this is the first of the three for those. And so they come now to the house of the synagogue official. And he saw a commotion and people loudly weeping and wailing. Well, the mourning has begun because the precious daughter has died. And entering in, he said to them, "Why make a commotion and weep? The child has not died, but is asleep." They began laughing at him. Now, this figure of sleep for death, right? John 11, our friend Lazarus is asleep, and they, oh, good, he's resting, he'll get better then. And then he plainly tells them, no, I meant he was dead. But this asleep, like in 1 Corinthians 15, we think about the departed as those who are asleep in Jesus. And so this is a common figure. Jesus is the one who made it common, right? We imitate the language and the outlook of Jesus as followers of his. And so this girl is asleep. Now, they don't get the figure. They get that he's saying that she's still with us. They just know that's factually not so. And so, oh boy, what a simpleton. He thinks she's not dead. They begin laughing at him. And I like the next line, but putting them all out. All right, out you go. You don't believe? Out you go. Putting them all out, he took along the child's father and mother and his own companions, and he entered the room where the child was. Then Jesus said to them plainly, then taking the child by the hand, he said to her, "Talitha cum," which is translated, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." So Tabitha cum, little girl, so up. It's time for you to get up. It is interesting how Peter echoes these words with Tabitha, the precious saint that he raised from the dead in the book of Acts, but that's another story. All right, so little girl, get up. And immediately the girl got up and began to walk, for she was 12 years old. And immediately, two more immediatelys in one verse. Immediately she got up, and immediately they were completely astonished. I guess so. Who heals the dead? Who raises the dead? Who gives life to the dead? Well, that's Jesus' business, isn't it? And that's the whole point of the gospel. To those who were dead in their sins and trespasses, right? He in Romans 6, you rise to walk in a newness of life. All things are made new. It's a new birth. You're a new creature. And so here is the power of Jesus. And again, we believe he can do that in the spiritual realm because we see the analogs to it in the physical realm. And so she gets up and they are astounded. Jesus was doing miracles that even the Old Testament prophets, they just didn't do. Although there are three resurrections in the Old Testament, but nobody just walking up and on his own authority in his own name saying, "Little girl, get up," right? Like, "Girl, get out of bed," and that's all it took. And so here's the first of Jesus's three resurrections, where he raises people during his ministry. Yes, absolutely, they would be completely astounded. And then again, he gave them strict orders that no one should know about this. And he said that they should give her something to eat. Now, even though they're in a room with only girl, parents, three of the disciples, Jesus, 7 people. There's 7 people in the room, right? Jesus and 3 with him, so that's 4. The girl and her parents, that's 3 more. 7 people in the room, and he says, "Don't tell anybody." What do you think happened? From Matthew, it says this. We don't take cross references too often in this study of Mark, but here we'll do it. Mark 9:26, and this news went out into all the land. So, as I said, the fellow who was told to tell did a lot better following his instruction than any of the people who were told not to tell. But we can see how you would want to tell. How would you not, except that Jesus said it? So here is these powerful healings. The man with a legion of demons, the woman with a 12-year medical issue that doctors could only make worse, and then a little girl who's actually dead. So when it comes to healing, what else can you do? What else can you do? And so Mark gives us these grand ones together so we can see what Jesus' power was. And again, Mark is a crafted narrative. There's other things that happen which actually are similar, just because Jesus is so extraordinary. But we have these to concentrate our mind on the power of Jesus in this. And actually, I see we didn't change the title. There are 3 powerful healings, so we got the wrong title. Parables in the Storm was last time, but here we had these three very powerful healings. All right, so with that, we conclude the 5th chapter with our 3 powerful healings, despite what the heading says. And so plenty enough to appreciate who Jesus is, the power that he had, the compassion that he has for his people. So the great works of God and the mercy shown, that's in Mark chapter 5.